Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Shri Radhe. Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivacharya Asutrasata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charna Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की, वृंदावन धाम की, मथुरा धाम की, नवदीप धाम की, श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी की, यमुना माई की, श्रीमती तुलसी देवी की, सामवेद भक्त वृंद की, निताई गौर प्रेमानंदी. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutle Srimate Bir Krishna Goswaminiti Namne Namo Hamsa Nikashaya Prabhupada Priyayate Sudita Shuddhi Nishta Bhayam Tasya Vakya Nuvadine. Good morning everyone and Hare Krishna. Happy Ekadashi to everyone. Welcome to all our viewers online on Mayapur TV and on ISKCON Sydney YouTube and also Facebook. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, titled Schedule Incarnations. And we are reading from text 48. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Okay. Let me start again. Sadrayanniyam yayatoyo. Sadrayanniyam yayatayo. Yamakarta hetim. Jayush swaradiva. Nipana kanitram indraha Sadrayan niyam yayatayo Yamakarta hetim Jayuswaradiv iva Nipana kanitram indraha Sadrayanniyam yayatayo Yamakarta hetim Jayuswaradiva Nipana kanitram indraha Sadrayanniyam yayatayo Yamakarta hetim Jayuswaradiva Nipana kanitram indraha. Sadrayam nimam hayatayo Yamakarta hetim Jayusvaradiva Nipana kanitram indraha Satyam nim yamya yatayo Yamakarta hetim Jayusvaradiva Nipana kanitram indraha Sadrayanyam yayatayo Yamakarta hetim Jayusvaradiva Nipana kanitram indraha. Okay. Sadrayak, artificial mental speculation or meditation. Niyamya, controlling. Yatayaha, the mystics. Yama karta hetim, the process of spiritual culture. Jayu, are given up. Swarat, fully independent. Eva, as. Nipana, well. Kanitram, trouble for digging. Indra, the controlling demigod, supplying rains. Okay, so we've got the translation and the purport here by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, translation. In such a transcendental state, there is no need of artificial control of mind, mental speculation, or meditation as performed by the Gyanis and Yogis. One gives up such processes as the heavenly king Indra forgoes the trouble to dig a well. So we will repeat. In such a transcendental state, there is no need of artificial control of the mind, mental speculation or meditation as performed by the Gyanis and Yogis. One gives up such processes as the heavenly king Indra forgoes the trouble to dig a well. Okay, so the purport. A poor man in want of water digs a well and undertakes the trouble of digging. Similarly, those who are poor in transcendental realization speculate on the mind or meditate by controlling the senses. But they do not know that such control of the senses and achievement of spiritual perfection are simultaneously made possible as soon as one is factually engaged in transcendental loving service of the Supreme Person, the Personality of Godhead. It is for this reason that the great liberated souls also desire to be associated in hearing and chanting the activities of the Lord. The example of Indra is very appropriate in this connection. King Indra of heaven is a controlling deity or demigod for arranging the clouds and supplying rains in the universe. And as such, he does not have to take the trouble to dig a well for his personal water supply. For him, digging a well for a water supply is simply ludicrous. Similarly, those who are factually engaged in loving service of the Lord have attained the full ultimate goal of life. And for them, there is no need of mental speculation to find out the true nature of God or His activities. Nor do such devotees have to meditate upon the imaginary or real identity of the Lord. Because they are factually engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord's pure devotees have already achieved the results of mental speculation and meditation. The real perfection of life is therefore to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Okay, So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deen Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuva Evacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so this morning it's a very nice message. It's to do with the transcendental service of Lord Krishna. And for those of us who have taken up this important service, there is no need for any other mental speculation or trying to imagine the Lord in his form. And the nice example that was taken by Srila Prabhupada in this regard, in this purport, was Lord Indra. I mean, the person who supplies the water, supplies the rain, does not need to dig a well. And so, this particular purport actually is also asking us to safeguard ourselves against activities that would take us away from the actual connection or the relationship with Lord Krishna. In other words, we have certain procedures to do the worship, and we have certain rules and regulations, and we tend to find those who are possibly it happens more on the altar. The pujaris, they are quite specific on how to perform the altar worship and follow the rules and the mantras. And what happens is sometimes we get so engrossed in following the procedure that we kind of leave behind the actual purpose is to be aware of Krishna in a very personal sense. So I'll take an example. This is not pointing fingers at anyone, but this is just a small example that we come across. We have certain, when we show the lamp, for example, the diya, and we have to go 3, 4, 3, 2, 1 or 7 times. So when we are showing the lamp, then we start counting. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 here, 2 at the feet, and we kind of forget that this is Krishna, and we kind of we are aware in a certain stage, but we are not really fully connected that Lord Krishna here is a lamp. Like for example, the same lamp in Vrindavan, when Lord Krishna had invented his pastimes, and the gopis, they used to go to Lord Krishna's house to light the first lamp of the evening. So Mother Yashoda used to be there, and the lamp used to be there, and the ladies would go and light the lamp. And they would also go, obviously, to under the pretext of meeting Lord Krishna, to see Lord Krishna. And obviously, who wouldn't? I mean, right now in Corona, there's so many people, devotees, wonderful devotees, who are wanting to come and see the deity of Lord Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, and they cannot for one reason or another. So they are all very anxious. So the ladies of Vrindavan also very anxious to see Lord Krishna. And the lamp, the lamp is the excuse, but they want to see Lord Krishna. So this particular lady was not allowed, I think, was sometimes their parents or their husbands stop them. So this particular lady was not allowed to see Krishna. So she was lighting the lamp, and the lamp started burning her fingers because she was so engrossed in the meditation of Lord Krishna and his appearance that she wasn't even aware that she's burning her fingers. So that's the point I was trying to make, is the transcendental service of Lord Krishna is very personal. And if you are busy counting the number of times, not that I'm trying to say don't count. Obviously, these are our procedures that we follow. I'm just taking it as a small example in getting so engrossed in the actual ritual that we forget that is Krishna. So it's a very sweet pastime of the devotees of Lord Krishna. Like, for example, the lady gopis, when they ran to the Vrindavan forest, they would forget to put their kajal or forget to put whatever, or dress properly even. They were in such a mad rush to see Lord Krishna. So I was going through this pre-reading of this particular shlok, and I thought I need to approach this in a very in a different way from our usual shastras. Maybe talk about one of these pastimes of Lord Krishna's devotees who have gone through this kind of thing, as opposed to those who are mentally speculating about Krishna. And the story that I thought of at that time is the Brahmin's wives. You might have read it in the Krishna book. It is on chapter 23. So I brought my Krishna book today, and I thought I'd read it out, and perhaps it will give us a little bit of a different perspective on how we conduct our transcendental service to Lord Krishna. I mean, none of us are actually perfected yet. We are all struggling at different stages to reach Lord Krishna, and we are all learning at every stage. So, this particular morning, the Lord Krishna and Lord Balram, along with all the gopas, they were tending to the cows, and they were grazing the cows, and suddenly the boys said to Krishna and Balram, they said, "Dear Krishna and Balram, you are both all powerful. You can kill many, many demons, but today we are much afflicted with hunger." So they were not interested in demons this morning. They were just worried about food. And because they hadn't had their breakfast also. So they said to Krishna, "Please arrange something for us to eat." So Lord Krishna thought, okay, this is a very, very good opportunity, perfect opportunity to glorify one of his special devotees. Now Lord Krishna is a little bit tricky, we all know that. Every action that he does, there is a reason behind it. And most of the time, it is to glorify his devotees. Most of the time, he glorifies his devotees. He likes to do that. So he decided in this particular request for food to glorify the wives of these Brahmins. Because he knew that the wives of these Brahmins were very special devotees. And he thought, okay, so let me glorify the wives of the Brahmins in Vrindavan and at the same time get some food. So he told these boys, he said, when you go, you can go and ask the Brahmins for food. So don't go, he didn't ask them to approach the wives, the Brahmins. But he also said, this is Lord Krishna's words, he said, these Brahmins are not Vaishnavas. So there are many Brahmins in India who are all over the world actually. They're practicing, but they might not be Vaishnavas. And the reason he said, Lord Krishna said, they can't even chant our names, Krishna and Balaram. So here there's a very specific implication that we should always chant his names. And that qualifies us as Vaishnavas simply by chanting the name. So he said, they're Brahmins, but they're not Vaishnavas because they cannot even chant our names. So you could be Brahmins, you could be wearing a Brahmin thread, but unless you chant Lord Krishna's names, you are not a Vaishnava, not under the classification. So these are the words that he said. And he said, oh, these Brahmins, they are busy chanting the hymns, Vedic hymns, and they have the Vedic knowledge, but because they are not attracted by the names of Krishna and Balram, you had better not ask them for food in my name, or you should not ask that Lord Krishna is asking for food. Don't even take my name. So this is another point, that Lord Krishna is in our hearts, and He knows what we are and what kind of devotees we are. He knows. He also knows that if somebody approaches a certain person who's a practicing Brahman or something, if you approach them for help, he knows whether you will listen or not. So a couple of things there. You could be Brahman, but if you are not chanting the names, you are not a Vaishnava. And the other thing is, Lord Krishna is in your heart, so He knows what stage of bhakti you are at. So He specifically asked these boys, He said, don't take my name. And He also said that these Brahmins, because they give charity to caste and creed, they actually are, what's the word that we look for? Discrimination. They discriminate. So they might give the charity to Lord Balram. The reason is the Lord Balram is known as the son of Vasudev. So Vasudev is a Kshatriya. So he said the Brahmins might give this charity to a Kshatriya. But because I am the son of the cowherd Nand Maharaj, I am a Vaishya. So it's not a suitable caste category. So if you take my name, they won't give. So don't take my name at all, because the Brahmins think I'm a Vaishya. So then these boys go, and the first thing they do is they go and go to these Brahmins who are performing these Vedic rituals and singing the Vedic hymns. They're in the process, and the food offerings have been made to the yagna. So there's lots of scrumptious looking preparations, food preparations already there. So the boys go there and they say, first of all, they go and they offer their obeisances to the Brahmins and say, oh, earthly gods. So they are actually calling the Brahmins earthly gods. Kindly hear us. Kindly hear us, who are ordered by Lord Krishna and Balram. We hope you know them both very well and wish you all good fortune. So they go and speak in very sweet words. And they say, we have come to ask for some food, because we are hungry. So they actually address the Brahmins with due respect, even though they are kind of just simple boys in the forest and they're grazing the cows. And this is what we were reading just earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that when we are performing transcendental service, we don't really need to speculate, we don't need to meditate, we don't need to know the highest of Shastras, because we are already in association with Lord Krishna, in transcendental service of Lord Krishna. Automatically everything is there anyway. So automatically you will have that knowledge and of the Shastras, of the highest Shastras. So they said, you are all Brahmanas and knowers of religious principles, and you think that you should give us charity, then give us some food and we shall eat along with Krishna and Balaram. You are the most respectable Brahmins within the human society, and you are expected to know all the principles of religious procedure. So they are saying, you Brahmins, you know the best, and you know, you have all the knowledge, please give us some food. So this is the point. I'm just like coming to this paragraph. Although the boys were village boys, they were not expected to learn in all the Vedic principles and religious rituals. So they were not expected to know any of that. But they hinted, with their words, there was a hint that because they had association of Krishna and Balaram, they knew all the principles already. So that is the thing with devotees of Lord Krishna in our temple. We might have somebody who's been sweeping the temple forever, like since the time they came till the time now. So for many years, you know, I think this is a simple person who's sweeping the floor, but the bhakti there, because of the transcendental service, that person would be the best of the devotees, and we would not know. In other words, we are taught not to discriminate, not to judge anyone. Who's higher in bhakti, who's lower, we never know. We don't know. We just don't know, because Lord Krishna knows. So So they were expressing this, the boys, that they knew all those principles just by association, Krishna and Balaram, and therefore the Brahmins should immediately deliver some food without hesitation. And the boys also said, Lord Vishnu and Krishna Balaram are waiting. So they were saying that Lord Krishna is actually Lord Vishnu, and he's waiting for some food. So although the companions of Lord Krishna and Balaram were simple cowherd boys, they were in a position to dictate to the Brahmins. So you can just imagine, we have these Brahmins who are fully dressed with a Brahman thread, sitting in front of the Yagna fire, and looking very important with all the. I'm not trying to say that they're bad. There's good in that, doing those things also. They get the benefits. But if they're not chanting the names, obviously, and if they don't respect Krishna, then they're not of this right standard. So the boys were saying that we are in a position to dictate to them. They're just simple cowherd boys and dressed in very simple clothes. So they're saying, okay, so we are in a position to dictate even to the high-class Brahmins engaged in Vedic rituals of sacrifice. But despite being highly elevated in the knowledge of Vedic sacrificial rites, all such non-devotee Brahmins, although they think themselves as very highly elevated, are ignorant, foolish persons. So they were thinking that they are kind of high. The reason why I was reading this story is just to describe to you the difference between those who are engaged in transcendental service and those who are engaged in Vedic rituals, the difference between the two. So there's a Srila Prabhupada writes down, in spite of their advancement in Vedic knowledge and rituals, they do not understand Krishna. Therefore, their knowledge of Vedas is useless. So we might spend ages and ages and ages reading the Vedas, but if we do not know Krishna, then all of that effort and time is practically useless. Practically useless. So then I'll just continue a few pages. So the Brahmins were so rude, actually. They did not even respond to the boys begging for food in the name of Krishna. So they didn't even reply with a yes or a no. Not even that. That's how rude they were. And so the boys became disappointed, obviously. And they returned to Lord Krishna without the food that they had asked. So they went back to Lord Krishna and said, not successful, mate. We haven't got the food. By the Brahmins, they didn't even respond with a yes or a no. So then what did Lord Krishna do? He told them something that's quite useful to know for our book distributors. He said that they should not be sorry for being refused by the Brahmins. So he consoled them. He said, don't be sorry, because that is the way of asking. So we have the book distributors who go out and sometimes they're refused. That we don't want to know about Krishna. We don't want to know about your philosophy. We should not be disappointed, because that is how it is. They will refuse you. Some will refuse you and some won't, but it's no reason to get sorry or anything like that. This is just what Lord Krishna told the boys. They should not be sorry for being refused. He convinced them, one who is engaged in collecting or begging should not think he will be successful everywhere. So you won't be successful everywhere. So then he said, now try something different, plan B. Try plan B, go to the wives of the Brahmins and go and ask them. So now we can see the difference between the wives and the Brahmins. The Brahmins were practicing all kinds of Vedic rituals, and the ladies, when the boys went, the wives of the Brahmins were sitting inside dressed very nicely. They were dressed very nicely with all the jewelries and beautiful saris. And they went there and they said, After actually offering respectful obeisances to the ladies, they said, please, we want to inform you that Lord Krishna and Lord Balram are nearby. So first of all, they tell the wives they're close. I mean, if somebody comes to tell you Krishna is just nearby, what will you do? You will just run. I know I will. So they're saying, okay, please be informed, Lord Krishna and Lord Balram are nearby. And they come here with cows, and we are here on their instructions, because we are here because we are very hungry and we want some food. Actually, when I was growing up, I mean, being from an Indian culture, our grandparents, and just grew up with it, our grandparents used to tell us, and our mothers and fathers also, always keep some extra food in the house. They used to cook with bigger pots than necessary. Like, then I started living in Australia. Our culture here is when you bake a dinner or lunch or something, you just make enough for whoever is present. They just make, sometimes, I mean, I know that in the Western culture, they just make exactly a plate full. If there's one person, one plate full, that's it. So there's no extras, there's no wastage. But the way we grew up was, my grandparents used to say, make sure there's always something in the pot. And whenever you used to come to our house or my grandparents' house, wherever in our family's house, they'd head straight to the kitchen and there'll be food in the pot. Always. There was never a time when there was never food there. Always there was food. They always used to make extras. And we used to keep dogs. So the extra food that became, throwable wouldn't be thrown out. They were given to the dogs. The dogs would eat it. So, but there was always extra food because they said you never know who's going to come to your house and ask for food, and it could be God himself. That was the underlying explanation, that God could come and ask for food in your house. So make sure you've got enough food. Make sure you've got extra plates. So that's how we were. And my mother used to cook she used to cook so much. That was what she liked to do. So my sisters, our family in a tradition, they kind of fall in that category. We kind of get in the habit of making extra. Although we don't have dogs in Australia, so we don't know what to do with the extra food. But yeah, that's the whole point. You never know when God is going to come, or God's messengers. So in this case, the cowherd boys went to the wives and said, Lord Krishna is nearby and he wants food. So immediately upon hearing this, the wives of the Brahmins became so anxious, and their actions were spontaneous. It wasn't like they were meditating or anything like that. Impulsive, spontaneous. And this is, I think, was it called Raganuga Bhakti? Always spontaneous. Lord Krishna is hungry, let me give him some food. So they immediately went in there and filled the pots with all the food that they had prepared. Now these foods were offered by the Brahmins in the Vedic rituals anyway, in the yagna. So there was plenty of nice prasadam to go. It was already prepared for the Vedic sacrifices. And this was not the only thing. These wives, they were waiting for a very long time to see Krishna. They were always in meditation of Krishna. They wanted to see Krishna, they wanted to see Balaram, and they said, oh, this is our chance, this is our opportunity. So they got everything ready. And as soon as they were leaving the house, the husbands, the fathers, the father-in-laws, the family elders, they got together and stopped these women. Don't go. And the husbands told the wives, if you go, don't come back, practically divorce them. That's how bad it was. Because the Brahmins had already refused Krishna and Balaram on the basis that they are Vaishyas or they are not God. They did not really realize that they were God. But they thought that they were Brahmins. So they said to their wives, if you go, don't go. But if you go, then practically divorced. So, but the wives, and they didn't really care. To them, it was Krishna. To them, Krishna was calling. So they basically left their husbands and their in-laws and their children. They just left them and went to Lord Krishna. This is what the gopis do too. The gopis, when they went for the Ras dance, or any time Lord Krishna plays the flute, they leave their husbands, their babies, and everyone. And this is what happens to us. I mean, I know every time there's a story like this, we want to relate to us also. What about us? Well, when we join the Hare Krishna movement, our families stop us, or there's always some kind of obstacle. You are joining a cult, or, don't do it. And we don't worry about it, disregard all that, and we become devotees anyway. And that's really how it should be, because that's following the footsteps of devotees who practice transcendental service to Lord Krishna and surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna, despite the obstacles. There are many, I'd say, devotees or aspiring devotees who are in situations in the household life where they're being stopped from chanting, they're stopped from having prasadam because their family is eating meat, or all kinds of challenges are there. I mean, I know one lady who used to be beaten by her husband for coming to the temple. This is in Fiji. Every time she'd come to the temple just for darshan, she'd go back. She'd come back the next day with bruises, and she was beaten, literally. And so I got her to meet Bir Krishna Maharaj. He was visiting at the time, and I said, Gurudev, this lady here is, every time she comes to the temple, she's being beaten by her husband. But she doesn't stop. She still comes. She would come anytime. I don't know how you can do that, be not scared of being beaten. But there are many devotees, despite that. And anyway, a few years later, this lady got initiated. Her name was, I can't disclose, obviously, but very nice, lovely name. And still she was being treated badly. Despite being a devotee, she was being treated badly. This is just an example of devotees who are struggling to become devotees. Just like the wives of the Brahmins, they want to go and give food to Krishna, but they're practically being divorced. So by their husbands, if you go and give food to your, Krishna will leave you. So it happens even up till today. So this lady, her husband still beat her after her initiation, and she was sleeping outside on the veranda, on the porch sometimes. The doors of the house would not open for her, and her children left her too. So that is kind of a great example of how we can be so devoted to Lord Krishna. Anyway, the husband then died. Krishna made arrangements. Just like when Prabhupada was wanting to buy the piece of land, and the gentleman who had the land wouldn't sell it to Prabhupada. Eventually, it was arranged that he'd be killed. The Juhu beach, I guess, I believe, the Juhu beach in Bombay, India. So, Krishna makes the arrangements. So these wives also ran to Krishna and left their husbands. And then what Krishna, continuing, the Brahman's wives saw Krishna. They actually wanted to see Krishna also. And this is a sweet description. I'm going to read this description of Krishna, how they saw Krishna in these words, Prabhupada's words. The Brahman's wife saw Krishna with a blackish complexion, wearing a garment that glittered like gold. And he wore a nice garland of forest flowers. So today we have got Lord Krishna wearing garland of red and cream color because it's Ekadashi. He always wears garlands. It's so beautiful, the garlands over here. So he was there wearing a garland of forest flowers and peacock feather on his head. And he was also painted with minerals found in Vrindavan. So he had paint all over his body with minerals found in Vrindavan. And he looked exactly like a dancing actor. He looked exactly like a dancing actor on the theatrical stage. They saw him resting one hand on the shoulder of a friend. So he was, if you can imagine, Lord Krishna standing with his hand on the shoulder of one of his friends. And on the other hand, he was holding a lotus flower. Just imagine how attractive he would have looked. And his ears were decorated with lilies. I'm not quite sure how you can decorate ears with flowers. Lilies, they're big, right? Anyway, his ears, maybe he had some tucked away near his ears. Lilies, and he wore marks of tilak. And he was smiling. So these ladies, they saw Krishna in that beautiful, charming state. They gave their hearts to Krishna straight away, and they embraced Krishna in their hearts, and Krishna understood their bhava, Krishna understood their emotions, their love for him, and he accepted them. So it's written here, Krishna could understand their minds, that they have come to him despite all the protests of the relatives, fathers, husbands, brothers, despite all the duties of household affairs. They just came to see him, very simple, and he was their life and soul. And there was those Brahmins who were practicing so religiously. We'll do this, 3 rounds of the lamp there, 2 rounds of the lamp there, 4 rounds of the phone. That's ritual. It is meant to be done, of course. It is in our guidelines. We should be doing that. So there's no complaint about that, obviously. But the whole point is, when you're doing that, you have to be aware that you are offering it to Krishna, with love. So these Brahmins and these wives. So he addressed the wives of the Brahmins. He said, "My dear wives of the Brahmins, you are all very fortunate, and you are welcome here." So he welcomed them. "Please let me know what I can do for you." If Krishna says, "What I can do for you," what are you going to say? "Lord Krishna, what can you do for me?" I am not quite sure what I'm going to ask him. I might say, "What can I do for you in service?" Possibly. How can I serve you? I would say that because my Guru Maharaj told me to say that in Vrindavan, when we're doing Govardhan Parikrama, he said, just ask for service. Whenever you get this question, just ask for service. You go into those trees and you put your forehead against those trees and ask for service. Don't ask for anything else. So, okay, we'll ask for service. So he asked the ladies, "What can I do for you? You're coming here to see me, neglecting all the relatives, fathers, brothers, husbands, is completely befitting." So he complimented them for leaving their husbands and children and relatives. And here he says something very important. One who actually does this, knows his self-interest, because rendering transcendental service unto me without motive or restriction is actually auspicious for the living entities, and he confirms that the conditioned soul who can reach the highest perfectional stage by surrendering unto him. So he's telling the wives of the Brahmins, by doing this, you have reached the highest stage you could possibly get. All the yagnas you do, all the Vedic rituals you do, is nothing compared to the surrender that you give him by leaving everything. So how does that relate to us? We have to understand that we have to leave certain material desires and material energies. Our spiritual desires are higher than the material desires. In other words, serving everything or doing everything for Krishna is higher than, say, enjoying our own personal dreams or just for our own pleasure. So it's all for Krishna's pleasure. That's the difference. So we have to think, okay, well, if I'm doing this, is it beneficial to Krishna? Or is it, from my personal experience, when I had to make a choice, I used to ask my Guru Maharaj, "Oh, should I do this or should I not?" And he say, make the decision that is most beneficial to your spiritual progress, your spiritual path. That's how I was guided. So I'm sharing this with everyone, because there are spiritual masters who also guide them in a similar way. When making a decision on your life, you have to think, how is this beneficial to me spiritually? And that can be anywhere, because, for example, I was thinking, should I go to Fiji or New Zealand? There was a time when I was trying to locate. And he said, locate where you think spiritually you'll be better off. So the decision was mine, and I made the decision. But you need to be, so I thought, let me be near a temple and be able to serve whatever service I get. So whatever is beneficial to you spiritually. And so he said, anybody who does this is basically surrendering to me, he's saying that to the wives of the Brahmins, obviously. You've reached the highest perfectional stage you can possibly do. And then he says, now you may return to, thank you for the food. And they enjoyed the food, but now you return to your husbands. And this is exactly what he said to the gopis. He said, you have come to me in the forest in the middle of the night. That was a little bit different. The rasa was different. He said, now go back home, to the gopis as well. And the gopis told Krishna, we have left everyone and we've come to you. Why are you sending us back? And the Brahmins' wives, they're saying exactly the same thing. It's a different rasa, obviously. They did not come to dance with Krishna in the middle of the night, but they still came to give him some food, and they said, we can't go back because our husbands have left us. Just to give Krishna some food, they decided to leave everything. And so Lord Krishna said, don't worry. I've arranged that your husbands will take you back, your family will take you back, and go back home. So the wives, unwillingly they left Krishna. They went to the Brahmins, back to the Brahmins. And what they find there, those Brahmins were doing the Vedic rituals, and they were still stuck into those Vedic rituals where it says, you cannot perform a yagna without your wife. So they were very happy to see their wife, because now the wives are there. They will do the yagna with them. So that is the reason they accepted the wives back. Thank you for coming back. So the wives were duly welcomed back. They sat down and performed the rituals. And the wives then spoke to another wife of a Brahman who was physically forced to stay back. So she couldn't make it to Krishna. So these wives described, this is how Lord Krishna looks, this is what he said. And just by listening and imagining Krishna, this particular wife who could not go, just gave up her body. She gave up her body and returned to Krishna in whichever way, that in whichever bhava she was. But she actually left that her body. That's fantastic. It's written here. After that, it says here, being completely absorbed in his thought, she gave up her material body, conditioned by the laws of nature. Anyway, so while I want to tell you what happened afterwards, after the return of the wives, the Brahmins, what happened to them? They actually began to regret. They had the certain realization, because the wives had been to see Krishna. It must have, the effect was that, we've got about 5-10 minutes, I'll just quickly finish it off. They must have gotten some bhakti or something from the wives, that they began to realize that whatever they had done was a big sin. So they began to regret. And this is what they said. And this is funny. They said, they began to talk among themselves, these Brahmins, and they said, to hell with our being born as Brahmins. To hell with learning all the Vedic literature. To hell with our performing great sacrifices and observing rules and regulations. To hell with our family. To hell with our expert service. So everything is to hell. Performing in rituals exactly according to the description of the scriptures. To hell with it all. For we have not developed transcendental lavish service to Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then they realized that the service is more important. They did realize that. And not only that, they actually appreciated their wives in this way. Just see how fortunate these women are. They said, according to the Vedic injunction, so this is for the women especially, it's also for the Prabhu's information, but for those ladies who think that, they don't get to perform spiritual services. I mean, there's a controversy right now about ladies being Diksha Gurus. It's still going on, I believe. So just this is what this particular Brahmins are thinking. He says, according to Vedic injunction, women are not allowed to undergo the purificatory process of initiation by sacred thread. So one of the reasons why women can't give Diksha, it was given, is because they don't wear the Brahmin thread. So they are not Brahmins. So here the Brahmins are saying the same thing. They are not allowed to live as brahmacharinis in the ashrams. They are not. I was living as a brahmacharini ashram here. The ashram closed down. We were not allowed to live. I was given a letter to leave. Brahmacharinis, they can't live in the ashram. And nor are they advised to undergo the strict disciplinary procedures, or they are not allowed to discuss philosophy. It does not happen in this temple. Ladies are allowed to discuss philosophy. We are doing it. I'm doing it right here. There are other Vaishnavas. So it's not like that here. But these Brahmins are saying they're not expert. And by nature, they are not pure. So they said by nature they are not pure. Actually, Vaishnavis are pure. As soon as you take up Krishna consciousness, this is words of Srila Prabhupada. He said there is a difference between those ladies who don't take up Krishna consciousness and those who are. As soon as the ladies who take up Krishna consciousness become initiated, they become pure and they are in a state where they can deliver somebody else through their preaching. This is Srila Prabhupada. I'm not making this one up, but just to differentiate for those ladies who are wanting more further information about their bhakti and how it compares with the Prabhus. I'm not criticizing the Prabhus either, but I'm just simply reading from the Krishna book and just saying what Srila Prabhupada's opinions were. So so it says how wonderful these women have developed transcendental love for Krishna that they became better than us. So the Brahmins could understand that the transcendental loving service that their wives performed qualified them even higher than they were. So with this issue of ladies not becoming Diksha Gurus, I believe, according to this book also, if they are performing transcendental service and if they have the proper qualifications, they should be able to give Diksha. Because it sets them apart from other ordinary ladies. And the Brahmin thread doesn't really matter, that we don't have a Brahmin thread. In fact, the Kanti Mala is our Brahmin thread. In our necks, the Tulsi Mala. It is not a physical thing. Srila Prabhupada actually didn't really place much, even though Brahmin thread was there, he asked one of his disciples to take out the Brahmin thread and tie something up. Has used it in a practical sense. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was also, like, he lost one of his Brahman threads, the first one that he received, in the water somewhere. And he was like devastated. And he said, don't worry, you can get another one. It is not the thread that makes you a Brahmin. It's your transcendental loving devotional service. It's how much you surrender to Krishna that makes you a Brahmin. In other words, you earn being a Brahmin. You earn it through your activities. So this is particularly for the women, that not to think that you are any less of a devotee. In other words, it is they were these Brahmins. Actually, they compared themselves to their wives. They said, we were not able to surrender to Krishna, but they were. And how difficult it is to surrender to Krishna. So they were also looking at the difficulty category too, how difficult it is to surrender to Krishna. So I'll read it out from the book. It says, in other words, it is very difficult for one to surrender fully unto the personality of Godhead without being purified by devotional service. So in other words, your difficulty becomes easier if you are practicing devotional service. It becomes easier to surrender. So the chanting and coming to the temple. That Mataji who came to the temple after being beaten by her husband, she is now on the altar and then she's serving pujari, doing pujari work. But, it's the devotional service that purifies her.